Redditors who got engaged but didn't make it to the wedding. What happened?
Story 1. We were together for 9.5 years, set to be married on our 10th anniversary. He started spending a lot more time at work than usual, happy hours, company outings, that kind of thing. He developed a friendship with a female coworker. I've had platonic male friends my entire life, so at first, it didn't seem like a big deal. But one time, my best friend and I were joking around, teasing that this coworker was his girlfriend, and he got really mad almost instantly. That's when I knew something was going on, even if he didn't want to admit it. A while later, I went on a weekend beach trip with my best friend, and he went camping with her and a gay couple. I'm sure they slept together that weekend, if they hadn't already. About a month later, he went to a work event and deliberately made it hard for me to come. He even said, "I don't really want you to go." Then she posted a Facebook status and tagged him in it, and I completely lost it. I called him and demanded that he come home. We talked, and he admitted he was in love with her and didn't want to be with me anymore. 8 months before the wedding. 3 years engaged. I moved out 3 weeks later and took the dog and the cat. He still tries to text me every so often. I don't respond. Story 2. We went to the same college and started dating early in my freshman year, but it turned out she was actually still a high school senior. So, during my second year, she went off to a very prestigious all-girls school on the East Coast. Almost immediately, she started talking about marriage and wanted me to drop out and move closer to her. I hesitated since she was only 18 and didn't have much relationship experience. I was 20 and had already had a few year-long relationships by then. But she kept insisting, so we got engaged right before finals when I went to visit her. She was over the moon. During her finals, she went to see a wealthy, influential European politician give a speech. He flirted with her a bit and mentioned that his son was looking for an American wife. She told him she was engaged but agreed to have lunch with the son, after checking with me, to play matchmaker for her friends. A few days later, she suddenly went from being super clingy and calling me several times a day to being hard to reach. On my birthday, she didn't even call, and I knew my worst fears were coming true. When we finally talked, she told me she'd been flown to the Caribbean one weekend and then to a formal ball in Europe, among other things. I honestly believe she was 100% in love with me just a few weeks before. Part of me doesn't blame her, but part of me still thinks she was a selfish snake. Anyway, they got married. He rode in on horseback with a sword and everything. In the meantime, I had my share of fun and eventually met a much better woman 7 years later. We've now been married for 8 years. In the end, I think it all worked out for the best, though it definitely reinforced my already paranoid fear of being left. Story 3. I was 17 and he was 18. He joined the military, and I waited for him. Things were turbulent. You see, he was originally my ex's best friend. I won't go into all the details, but he directly caused my breakup and then showered me with affection. Basically stalked me into giving in. We were together for a year. When Christmas came, he proposed. Then he threw me into a door because I didn't want to hang out with his friends. I stayed. I got pregnant. He went back to the military. I've always struggled with my mental health, and the stress caused me to lose the baby. Then, one day, I got a phone call. "You're a disgusting, cheating liar. I'm shutting off your phone. I'm keeping your ring. It's being resized. Never contact me again." It was 2 days before I was supposed to fly out to marry him. I was devastated. I cried for 3 days straight and barely ate for a week. It was awful. Eventually, I moved on and healed. Years later, we reconnected. I saw pictures of his daughter. She had been born 4 months after we broke up. "She's the same age ours would have been," he sneered at me. "If you hadn't gotten the abortion." I told him, "I'm miscarried." I haven't talked much to him since, except every few years when he's feeling down. That's when he reaches out, asking for one last hookup he thinks he deserves. He's a terrible person and a Redditor. I hope you read this, and I hope you know I'm done keeping your secrets. Story 4. I called off my wedding 3 months before it was supposed to happen. Why? Because I was a 17-year-old who would have been 18 by the wedding day, about to marry a 26-year-old man who had been dating me since I was 14. I was a victim about to marry my abuser. The engagement ring, which I later found out was fake, even though he had plenty of money, was just a way to buy my consent and silence while he cheated on me constantly. He was an alcoholic, a narcissist, and a predator. I wasn't one of those teens who looked older. I was 14 and looked 12. I thought I loved him because I believed he was saving me from my horrible home life. My mom and I had moved in with her boyfriend, only to discover too late that he was abusive. My fiancé would take me away from it sometimes, even if just for a little while, and that felt like safety to me back then. When things finally exploded at home, I ended up in a boarding house because I was still underage, and he didn't want me to move in until I turned 18. He needed to protect his clean public image. During that time, I got pregnant, and the pregnancy ended violently with a stillbirth. Despite everything, I still loved him. But then he started criticizing how I looked. He said I was gaining too much weight, even though I was perfectly healthy. I had started to develop hips and breasts, and he didn't like that. Soon, we were talking about dieting. I stopped eating, surviving mostly on water and low-calorie, safe foods. Eventually, I became underweight. What finally made me realize I wanted out was a box of chicken wings. After my mom escaped her abusive relationship, I moved back in with her. We lived near a big indoor market with amazing food vendors. I loved food, and the strict dieting was destroying me. One day, I decided to treat myself and bought a box of hot wings from my favorite stand. I sat down to watch my favorite movie, and as I ate, I realized two things. One, that this miserable diet would be my life forever if I stayed with him. And two, that him wanting me to look so unhealthy was deeply wrong. I was always tired, always cold, always hungry, and that wasn't love. So, right there, while eating that box of wings, I decided I was done. I called him and told him it was over. It took me another 3 years to completely break free, but the wedding was officially off. He never got back a cent of the deposits. It took me almost a decade to fully understand that he wanted me to stay looking like a 14-year-old forever. I used to defend our age gap by saying I was mature for my age, but now I know the truth. I was a child, and he was a grown man who took advantage of that. Story 5. He was a pilot in the Air Force and constantly in training. He proposed before leaving for officer training. Since we weren't married, I couldn't go with him, and he wanted to wait to live together until after marriage. We set our first wedding date for Christmas weekend that year, and then he asked to postpone it. We rescheduled for Thanksgiving weekend of the following year, while he was in pilot school for about a year and a half. He postponed that one too, not because of training, but because he wasn't ready to get married yet. We set a third wedding date for after his training ended. 3 months before the wedding, my dress bought, bridesmaids' dresses bought, everything booked, save the date sent. He asked to push it back again. He wanted to just stay engaged, but he was about to move to another base and would be deployed regularly. To stay together without being married and still see him, I would have had to drop everything, call out of work, and drive 6 hours anytime he happened to be stateside for a few days. It would have been impossible. By that point, we'd been together for 5 years, and I realized that if he still wasn't ready to marry me, he never would be. So, I gave the ring back. I hoped it would scare him, that maybe he'd realize he didn't want to lose me, but he barely reacted. When we officially broke up, I was visiting him halfway across the country, with 2 days left before my flight home. It sucked. He never told anyone what happened. Whenever friends asked, he'd just ghost them. He didn't cancel the DJ or any of the wedding arrangements. He made me handle everything. Nobody ever wanted to buy my old wedding dress, so I still have it. 2 years later, he, a 30-year-old man, got engaged to a 17-year-old girl he met through his church at his new base. Major bullet dodged. Looking back now, I realize he never really loved me. He loved the attention, affection, and emotional support I gave him. He needed a constant ego boost, and I was the one providing it. The man I eventually married is 10,000% more of a real man than he ever was. Story 6. We dated for 3 years before getting engaged. His family was very religious, and I wasn't. So from the start, I made sure to bring up things that could be potential deal breakers, like living together before marriage, which was a huge no-no for them, but non-negotiable for me. What kind of ceremony we'd have, and so on. For 3 years, he always told me he agreed with me, that he felt the same way, and that his family would just have to accept our decisions. But when it came time to actually make those decisions, he sided with his family on every single thing. Over and over, I was the one expected to compromise or make sacrifices to keep them happy. He never stood up to them. His only defense was that he didn't want to alienate them. About a year and a half before our planned wedding date, 6 months into our engagement, I brought up moving in together. I said it was time we started looking for a place. Instead of telling his parents, he asked them how they'd feel about it. Predictably, they were not okay with it and even threatened to withhold their wedding gift, a sizable amount of money, if we did. I told him I didn't care about their money. We didn't need it. He said, "That's a lot of money to turn your nose up at." So I talked it over with my parents, and my dad came up with the perfect compromise. My fiancé could move out on his own. He could afford it. He was 24 years old, and it was about time anyway. My parents would even lie and say I was still living at home. Then his parents wouldn't have any reason to complain. When we suggested it to him, his response was, "Yeah, but then I'd have to start paying rent and buying my own groceries when I could just save money by living at home for the next year and a half." That was it for me. From day one, I had said this was my only deal breaker. Either we live together or we don't get married. He chose his money and his family over me, so I chose my happiness over him. Best decision I ever made. Now I have my own dream apartment in the city, just 15 minutes from my dream job, which I got after we broke up. And I'm living my life exactly the way I want to. Story 7. Well, after we got engaged, her entire attitude changed. She suddenly became super controlling. About 6 months in, I went over to a friend's house and ended up staying really late. Nothing shady was going on, no girls or anything like that. I was completely faithful. I mean, I'd asked her to marry me, for crying out loud. Anyway, my phone died, and I didn't make it back to my place until around 3 a.m. At that time, we were still living separately while looking for a house, though she stayed at my place most of the time. I came home and immediately passed out. Next thing I knew, I heard glass breaking. I panicked, grabbed something to defend myself, and went to check it out. It was my fiancée, completely wasted, even though she wasn't supposed to drink because of her medication. Once I realized it was her, I put away my defense and tried to calm her down as she launched into a drunken rant about how I was cheating on her. Out of nowhere, she tackled me from behind and sent us both crashing through a sliding mirrored closet door. I tried to get up and throw on some clothes to deal with the situation, but the chaos just kept going. The next thing I knew, she came at me with a pair of scissors. After a brief struggle, I managed to stop her and grab the phone to call the police. I didn't know what else to do, and I didn't want to end up hurting her. While I was on the phone, she jumped on my back and bit me 3 times. One of them on my fingers so hard I honestly thought she was going to bite it off. The cops showed up, and they handled everything. I decided to be lenient and not press felony charges, but they still charged her with 4 other offenses. I only saw her once after that, 2 years later, when she was caught pouring sugar into my current girlfriend's gas tank, ruining her car and forcing me to press charges again. Looking back, I thank whatever higher power there is for letting my phone die that night. It saved me from marrying her. I definitely dodged a bullet. Story 8. Back in high school, I had extremely low self-esteem and never thought I had a chance with the guys I actually liked in my friend group. So I went after the ones I thought were safe, the ones no one else wanted. My ex was one of them. I've since learned that all my friends were like, "What is she doing? He's so out of her league." He latched onto me and used every manipulative tactic possible to keep me with him, exploiting my insecurities, convincing me no one else would ever put up with me, and belittling me in front of my friends. After high school, his family moved several states away, and I went off to college. That's when the long-distance relationship began, and honestly, LDRs can be dangerous because it's harder to recognize abuse from afar. He became paranoid about me being surrounded by college guys. If I didn't call him every night, I must be cheating. If I went to a party, I must be cheating. If I went to the movies, I must be cheating. He made me believe that if I didn't constantly prove my loyalty, I was a horrible person. So I stopped doing anything social at college. I went to class, went to the grocery store, and talked to him. That was it. He successfully isolated me from everyone. Once, I went to a restaurant with a few classmates before class. I even asked for his permission first, and he said yes. But during that meal, he called me over 30 times in half an hour. When I finally called him back, he was crying and said he changed his mind. Eventually, he convinced me to get engaged, saying no one else would ever want me and that I'd be alone forever otherwise. Then he joined the military, even though I begged him not to. He told me he didn't want to die a virgin and pressured me into sleeping with him, saying I wasn't allowed to be with anyone else after he died. It wasn't my choice. I just went along with it because I was scared and manipulated. He ended up stationed near my parents and would hang out with them, without me. I thought it was weird but ignored it. Then one day on the phone, I mentioned how many of my classmates smoked cigarettes, and he freaked out, making me swear I'd never smoke. He promised he wouldn't either. Later, at my graduation, my parents told me he'd been smoking at my house in front of them. That was the final straw. He had ruined my entire college experience. I called off the wedding. When I moved back home, he was waiting for me, literally. He hugged me the second I stepped on the lawn, followed me around the house, even waited outside the bathroom when I went in. I couldn't move without him touching me somehow. When I told him I needed space, he cried that he couldn't make friends. He constantly guilt-tripped me. 3 miserable months later, I was at his apartment and told him I wanted to break up. He started crying again, but I told him it wouldn't work this time. He instantly stopped crying, like flipping a switch. That moment terrified me. He lunged at me, jerking his fist back like he was about to hit me, but stopped just short. That's when it hit me. I was in an abusive relationship. I said whatever I had to say to calm him down and get out. I was finally done. After that, I was diagnosed with depression and PTSD. For months, he still came over to my house because he had manipulated my dad and brother into thinking he was a nice guy and that I was crazy. He'd hang out with them in my living room while I hid in my bedroom with the door locked. Eventually, they realized what he'd done to me. I was so close to marrying him. I already had the dress, the invitations, and the venue. Looking back now, I thank God every day that I didn't go through with it. Story 9. I actually just broke up with my fiancée of 8 years. We'd been engaged for about 1.5 years, and were just about to put a deposit down on a venue. He had struggled with depression and anxiety long before I met him, but he was always good at hiding it, or at least managing it well enough that it didn't cause many issues beyond sometimes not wanting to go out with our college or work friends. He also had a hard time controlling his drinking, especially in social settings where he used alcohol as a crutch. But he was funny, incredibly smart, caring, and had so many wonderful qualities that kept me around for a long time. Eventually, though, he started drinking heavily at home, alone, out of boredom, sadness, frustration, you name it. His depression worsened after we moved to a new city for work, and alcohol became his way to self-medicate and drown out the noise in his head. I couldn't go on business trips or visit my mom without worrying he'd lose control and spiral into a bender while I was gone. We went through countless cycles of sobriety and relapse. I supported him for years. I believed in him, in his goodness, in his worth as a person. I never saw myself as someone who needed to save a partner. But over time, I was forced into the role of caretaker whether I wanted it or not. I was his only friend. His depression had driven everyone else away. I was the only one who truly knew what was happening. He hadn't told his family about his struggles, and the few close friends who did know only found out because I finally broke down and needed someone to talk to. Eventually, I convinced him to seek professional help, and for a while, things started to get better. He began seeing a therapist he trusted, got on medication, and we were finally feeling ready to start planning the wedding again. For the first time in years, it felt like hope. Then, almost out of nowhere, he started drinking again. I still don't fully understand why. Maybe it was self-sabotage, maybe fear, but that was my breaking point. I couldn't do it anymore. I couldn't face another relapse, another round of promises and heartbreak. One night, I came home to find him in a blackout. That was it. I packed my things and left. I quit my job, moved back across the country to be near my friends and family, and started over. I found a better job, reconnected with people I'd lost touch with, and began building a new life. For the first time in years, I'm genuinely happy. In that relationship, there was never room for my sadness. If I ever felt unhappy, he would absorb it and make it his own. Now, I finally have the freedom to feel whatever I need to feel. I still love him deeply and genuinely want the best for him. I want him to find peace and happiness, to heal and thrive. But I've accepted that I was acting more as a crutch than a partner, and he needs help that I simply can't provide. It's still hard some days, but more than anything, I'm learning how to be my own person again. Story 10. We started dating during our sophomore year of community college, and were together for 5 years. I transferred to a 4-year university while he stayed home and became a firefighter/paramedic. After I graduated, I moved back home, and we moved into the house we had picked out together, one that he bought. We got a puppy and a kitten, built a life, and I truly thought we were happy. We talked seriously about marriage, and eventually, he proposed. But once we started living together, I began noticing how much he drank. He'd get blackout drunk multiple times and end up puking everywhere. On his days off, he'd spend hours playing video games, and he'd even play at the firehouse during his shifts. His friends, and even his brother, were incredibly disrespectful to me. Whenever we had people over, I'd clean the whole house top to bottom, cook for everyone, and still they'd treat me like garbage. Then I noticed him chatting constantly with some girl through a Facebook game. I looked her up. She was what people in that world call a badge bunny, basically a woman who chases police officers and firefighters. Her profile was full of suggestive photos with fire hats, hoses, and the like. I confronted him and told him to stop talking to her, or I was done. He finally agreed, but only reluctantly. The final straw came when he went to the casino one night with a buddy and simply never came home. I called and texted both of them. His friend, who was married, went home to his wife, so I knew they weren't together. By 8 a.m. the next morning, I was exhausted from crying, and he finally stumbled through the door. Turns out, he'd gotten completely wasted with a bunch of random people after his friend left and ended up sleeping it off in his truck in the casino parking lot. Sure, I was glad he didn't drive drunk, but the fact that he never called, never answered, and left me worrying all night was unforgivable. I asked him straight up if he planned on doing that kind of thing once we were married and had kids. His answer? Yes. That was it. That was the moment I grew a spine and told him I was done. I couldn't see a future with someone who had zero respect for me, whose friends treated me terribly, and who thought it was perfectly fine to disappear all night while his wife and kids sat at home wondering where he was. I am so glad I didn't go through with that wedding. Story 11. I'd been with my girlfriend for about 8 months, and before proposing, I made sure we were on the same page about life goals. I was completely in love with her. She seemed like the perfect person, kind, caring, studying nursing, and thoughtful toward everyone. We had a few serious conversations about the future, kids, careers, where we might live, and she told me everything I wanted to hear. Then, about a month later, it was like a switch flipped, and she turned into a completely different person. We were driving home one day after spending what I thought was a great Easter weekend with my parents when she suddenly started crying out of nowhere. I asked what was wrong, and she said, "You can't ask a girl about the future like that and not propose within a week. I feel like you're taking advantage of me." Looking back, that should have been the biggest red flag of my life. But I was young, stupid, and in love, so I tried to fix it. I told her I had already been planning to propose. I'm a big space nerd and had this idea to propose during a meteor shower, which wouldn't happen for another 6 months. I explained that it wasn't something I could just rush, but that I absolutely was going to propose to her. That's when things went completely off the rails. The sweet, loving woman I'd known suddenly became controlling, cruel, racist, and emotionally abusive. She started threatening me regularly, saying things like, "If you don't do this, I'll hurt myself," or using guilt and manipulation to control me. Like an idiot, I thought she was just anxious about the engagement, so I decided to propose earlier, hoping it would calm things down. Big mistake. Things only got worse. Wedding planning was miserable. Anytime I offered a suggestion, she and her mom would accuse me of being a groomzilla. I had one simple request, that my mom make my groom's cake since she's a professional cake artist, and even that turned into a fight. As the wedding got closer, I noticed she'd stopped wearing her engagement ring. She'd go out and leave it at home, which immediately made me suspicious. One day, while she was out, I guessed her Facebook password. It wasn't hard, and what I found confirmed everything. She'd been messaging a guy she knew from high school, someone she'd actually asked me to hire as our wedding DJ, inviting him over while I was away on a business trip. That was it for me. I told her to pack her things and get out of my house. That's when she went nuclear. The next day, she filed a false police report and a restraining order for domestic violence, trying to destroy my career and reputation. It took over a year to get the charges dropped. Thankfully, buried in her Facebook messages, I also found proof that she'd done almost the exact same thing to a guy before me, accused him of the same things after he broke up with her, along with other messages that completely discredited her story. Eventually, the case was thrown out, and I moved on. But the experience left me deeply distrustful. It showed me just how easily someone can ruin your life with nothing but words and no real evidence. If I hadn't found those messages, I could have lost my job, my freedom, and my entire future. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe, activate the notification bell, and share a similar story or anything you'd like to say in the comments. See you next time.